Benjamin had been celibate for me for 5 years, but right before our wedding, he broke his vow. The other woman was a beautiful university student who, in the curve of her brows and eyes, bore a striking resemblance to me in my school days. Afterward, his friend asked him how it was. He savored the memory for a moment and said, "Much more tender than Ava." He lamented, "If I had known girls out there were so much fun, I wouldn't have tied myself down to one person. What a waste of those 5 years." I accepted it all with a calm demeanor, and privately, I contacted the young woman. On our wedding day, she wore my wedding dress and walked onto the stage in my place. The moment Benjamin turned to look, he completely lost his mind. Once the wedding date was set, both Benjamin and I became incredibly busy. I was busy planning the wedding, while he had to wrap up his work in advance to clear a fortnight for our honeymoon. That day, I had chosen 2 different venue design proposals and went to his office to get his opinion, but before I could knock, I heard his disdainful voice from within. "Women really lose their appeal once they get old. Someone like Zoe, now she's just right." I was baffled, but I had a sinking feeling that the old woman he was talking about was me. I peeked through the crack in the door and continued to listen as the picture slowly came into focus. I stayed celibate for Ava for 5 whole years. Now, with the wedding date set, she still won't let me touch her. I'm starting to regret my decision to marry her. His friend let out a snort, his voice dripping with sleaze. "Since you think old women are tasteless, how does your little girlfriend taste?" Benjamin squinted slightly, rubbing the tip of his pen with his index finger as he mulled it over. "Very tender. Much more tender than Ava. She's like a delicacy. I can't get enough of kissing her." He sighed. "If I had known girls out there were so much fun, I wouldn't have tied myself down to one person. What a waste of those 5 years." Through the gap in the door, I saw his eyes swirling with a chaotic mix of unfulfilled desire. It was a stark contrast to his usual restrained self. In that moment, he was like a still pond. A single stone could send ripples spreading across its surface. I clenched my fists, feeling my heart slowly being submerged. Just as I summoned the courage to burst in and confront him, that stone Zoe appeared. Zoe emerged from Benjamin's private lounge. She was wearing a white blouse and a pleated skirt, her face still bearing the sleepy look of a post-nap haze. Upon closer inspection, she looked remarkably similar to how I did back in my school days. "Benjamin, are you guys still discussing the project?" The girl's voice was sweet. Benjamin didn't answer, but his sticky gaze remained fixed on her. "I have to get back to class, or I'll fail my finals and have trouble graduating." "Okay, I'll have the driver take you." Benjamin wrapped an arm around her waist and naturally planted a kiss on her cheek. "Don't. Your friend is still here." Though Zoe was shy, their bodies were pressed intimately together. I'd read online that such body language often signified a deep, physical attraction. Then there were their lingering gazes, their hands reluctant to part, and the way she kept looking back as she left. How sweet. If only I weren't Benjamin's fiancé. When Zoe came out, I was sitting at the desk of Benjamin's assistant. She saw me and eyed me with a mixture of vigilance and confusion. "Didn't Benjamin say no one was allowed up here without his permission?" I smiled. "The driver is out on an errand, Mr. Lou asked me to take you back to school." Her guard dropped, and she followed me to my car. "Wow, you're just an assistant and you drive such a nice car." The young woman clearly hadn't seen much of the world, though the car had a Mercedes-Benz logo. It was only worth about $50,000, but I didn't correct her. "Mr. Lou is very generous," I said. "If you work for him long enough, the benefits are quite good." "You've been with Benjamin for a long time, 5 or 6 years. We were classmates. He saw I was capable and asked me to stay on." I watched her curious eyes in the rearview mirror. As expected, she leaned forward to ask a more personal question. "Then you must have met his wife, right?" I replied coolly. "Mr. Lou doesn't have a wife yet. That woman is a fiancé at best." A delighted smirk touched the corners of her lips. "So, what kind of person is his fiancé? In what respect? Age, education, family, job?" "She's 28, has a bachelor's degree, comes from a single-parent home, and works as a teacher." "Sounds pretty average," she said with a pout. "And she's almost 30, she's past her prime childbearing years. How is she supposed to give Benjamin children?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I never expected such words from a university student. It seemed sex education still had a long way to go. After a few seconds of silence, I continued the conversation. "She probably won't be having children with Mr. Lou." Zoe's full lips parted in a gasp. "Why not?" "Because of you. From what I know of Mr. Lou, he's so fond of you, he might not even marry his fiancée." "Really? Could you keep an eye on things for me?" "Of course," I said. When Zoe got out of the car, she deliberately took off her jacket. Only then did I see the red marks covering her neck and arms. Perhaps my gaze was too intense, because Zoe shyly put her jacket back on. Please don't look, sister. It's embarrassing. I averted my eyes and asked gently, does it hurt? A wronged expression crossed her face, and her lip trembled. It hurts a lot. He's always so rough, and I don't dare to refuse him. Next time Mr. Lou is like that, just bite his shoulder and tell him you're uncomfortable. He won't force you then. How do you know all this? I leaned closer to her ear and smiled. His fiancé told us when we were gossiping. Zoe covered her mouth and giggled. You're so nice, sister. I'll try that at home. At home. After dropping Zoe off, I sent a message to Benjamin, telling him to have dinner by himself. Then, I switched to my own Bentley and drove straight to the home Benjamin and I were supposed to share after our marriage. I wanted to see if the home Zoe spoke of was this place. The house had been renovated a year ago. Benjamin had kept the passcode from me, saying he had a surprise waiting for me inside on our wedding night. 061397. My birthday. Beep. Incorrect passcode. 083195. Benjamin's birthday. Beep. Incorrect passcode. 022520. The anniversary of when we started dating. Beep. Incorrect passcode. On my last attempt, I tried the birthday I had just gotten from Zoe. 111,305. Beep. Door unlocked. Even though I had anticipated this outcome, the confirmation of it sent a pain so sharp through my chest that I could hardly breathe. My steps faltered as I entered, and I collapsed against the entryway cabinet. 2 pairs of slippers were neatly arranged there. It seemed they came here often. I wandered through the house for a long time. Matching toothbrushes, matching pajamas, matching trinkets, it was all here, cozy and romantic. When I reached the master bedroom, I discovered it had a mirrored ceiling. I remembered watching a foreign romance film with Benjamin once. The male lead's bedroom had a similar design. At the time, he had rested his head on my shoulder, breathing into my ear, begging me to try it with him one day. Wouldn't it be interesting? Making love while watching ourselves in the mirror. I had always been cautious about such things, but thinking we would one day be husband and wife, I saw it as a potential form of intimacy. That one time, I had reluctantly agreed. I just never thought he would remember it all this time and present it to me as a surprise. The mirror above reflected the shattered look in my eyes. It was strange. It was a crisp autumn day, but inside this room, I felt a damp, sticky humidity. I could even smell the lingering salty scent in the air. I nearly gagged. My brain screamed at me to leave immediately, but just then, the front door opened. The sound of heavy breathing filled the house. In a panic, I hid in the study connected to the master bedroom. The study only had a desk. Knowing Benjamin's carnal nature, he wouldn't waste his time in here. Benjamin, isn't this a bit too much for one day? Don't talk. Zoe immediately fell silent, even her moans sounding suppressed. But after just a few moments, she cried out in pain. I'm sorry, Benjamin. It hurts too much. Benjamin didn't stop. He kept going. 1 minute, 2 minutes. My stomach churned more violently, and my head began to spin. I bit down hard on my own arm, both to keep myself conscious and to punish myself for my cowardice. I couldn't understand what had possessed me to trap myself in here. I should have caught them in the act the moment they walked in. A slap for each of them to vent my rage, but that seemed too easy for them. Or perhaps it was my feelings for Benjamin that made me unable to face his betrayal directly. After all, because I insisted on no premarital sex, he had willingly remained celibate for me for 5 years. Amid the fierce sounds of their lovemaking, Benjamin suddenly hissed. Who told you to bite me, Benjamin? I'm not comfortable. Can't you be a little gentler? Zoe's voice was soft and pleading, enough to melt anyone's heart. Benjamin was no exception. He paused, then said gently, whatever you say. A familiar voice, a familiar tone. It had been a long time since Benjamin had spoken to me like that. I vaguely remembered the last time he had said those words to me was 6 months ago. That night, someone had drugged Benjamin during a business meeting. To prevent himself from doing something wrong, he had called me to his side to watch over him. He soaked in a bathtub of cold water, his body trembling, but his face was an unnatural shade of red. I went to the bar to get him some water. When I turned back, I saw Benjamin lunging at me like an untamed beast. I knew he couldn't control himself, but I wasn't willing to compromise. In my panic, I bit down on his collarbone. Blood mixed with water dripped down, spreading across the white carpet. Benjamin's eyes were crimson, his pupils constricting suddenly. I'm sorry, Ava, my mind is a mess. I straightened my clothes and pushed him back into the tub. Seeing my silence, he apologized again and again. I'm sorry, Ava, I didn't mean it. Ava, please don't ignore me. I can't control myself. Like a disapproving parent, I once again emphasized my aversion to premarital sex. He looked like a drowned dog, gently taking my hand and saying those words. Whatever you say. I'll listen to whatever you say. The sounds from the bedroom had stopped at some point. I heard the front door open and close twice. A message from Benjamin followed. Honey, where are you? I miss you. Zoe also sent me an update. Sister, it really worked like you said. The way Benjamin looked at me was different. I replied, is that so? It seems the rumor is true. What rumor? That Mr. Lou wants to call off the wedding and marry you instead. I told Benjamin I was at my mother's house, but when I arrived, Benjamin was already there, helping her cook. My mother gave me a look. I followed her obediently into the bedroom. Why did you lie to Benjamin and say you were here? Do you have any idea how panicked I was when he suddenly showed up looking for you? I thought you were cheating on him. If your mother wasn't quick on her feet, you would have been exposed. Now tell me, what have you been up to? Catching a cheater. I said, who's cheater? My mother instinctively settled in for some gossip, but she didn't know the cheater I had caught was her prized son-in-law. I didn't say it directly. Instead, I asked, did you tell my father about the wedding? She waved her hand impatiently. I'll let him know in a couple of days. Don't bother. Why not? I thought you wanted your father to attend your wedding. My fingers fidgeted with the hem of my shirt, unsure how to tell her about Benjamin's infidelity. Finally, I took out my phone and showed her a photo of Benjamin and Zoe, their faces pressed together. Mom, Benjamin cheated. I just found out today. It took all my strength to keep my mother in the room. She was brandishing a pair of scissors, her face a mask of fury. Men are all the same. Cheating right before the wedding. Just you watch. I'll snip him. I snatched the scissors from her and told her to calm down. She then sat on the edge of the bed and began to weep sorrowfully. I knew she was remembering the past. It was when my mother was in the prime of her youth. She had gone south to work and met a handsome, wealthy young man from the city. They naturally became a couple. The young man promised my mother a future, so she let her guard down completely and gave herself to him. Soon, my mother became pregnant with me, but when she shared the happy news with him, the man's expression changed entirely. Under my mother's questioning, he confessed, he had a wife and children back home, and his wife's family was even more powerful than his. The promises he had made were nothing but empty words. He laughed at my mother's foolishness for believing a man's sweet talk. Then he left, leaving my mother to give birth to me and raise me all by herself. Decades passed. The world changed. My mother seized the opportunities of economic reform, started her own business, and became a successful tycoon. Meanwhile, that man's business ventures began to fail. To save his family's company, he had to seek opportunities on the mainland. I had planned to invite him to my wedding, as an ordinary guest. I wanted him to see how well my mother and I were doing. Not only was my mother a wealthy woman, but I, at not yet 30, had become a professor at a top university and was marrying an incredibly wealthy man. I wanted him to know that if I just said the word, his company could be saved from bankruptcy, but I would never say that word. Making him watch as I blocked every path to his salvation was my revenge. But now, that revenge had fallen flat. I despised premarital sex, wanting to protect myself from becoming passive in a relationship, but in the end, just like my mother, I had been deceived by a man. Back at home, Benjamin eagerly pressed me against the wall and kissed me deeply. It had been a long time since we'd kissed like that, passionate and sincere. Was he reliving a memory, or was he feeling guilty? All I felt was disgust. In that one kiss, Benjamin poured out all his affection, but I remained utterly calm. So this is what it feels like to fall out of love. In that instant, the cheating, the relationship, the 5 years of my youth, none of it seemed to matter anymore. My body felt lighter. Leaving Benjamin no longer seemed like the end of the world. Honey, what's wrong? Benjamin stopped when he got no response from me. He buried his head in the crook of my neck, kissing me again and again as if trying to merge me with his very soul. I grabbed his tie and led him into the bedroom. Husband, do you want me? Benjamin's eyes froze for a moment before an uncontrollable fire of desire ignited within them. Agree to 3 conditions, and I'll give you your reward early. What conditions? Tell your husband. Maybe I can devour you right now. Benjamin spread my legs, instantly reversing our positions. First, I want more than half of all your assets. Easy. I've already drafted the agreement. It's a voluntary gift. With that, he placed his hand on my lower abdomen and stroked it gently. Second, I want a grand wedding. I want you to invite everyone you possibly can. Done. I'll even invite all my company's employees. We'll have 180 tables. How does that sound? He was struggling to contain himself, urging me to state my third condition. Third, if we ever separate, we are not to disturb each other again. Benjamin's hand abruptly stopped. We looked at each other, words left unsaid. After a long moment, he rolled off the bed and sighed heavily. Ava, don't ever say things like that again. We will never be separated. He then straightened his shirt and went into the adjacent bedroom. I had expected this. Benjamin considered himself deeply in love with me and had once sworn he would marry no one else. A man who could build such a devoted persona for himself would likely cling to me even after a separation. But it didn't matter. Once the property agreement was signed, I would have leverage over him in the future. A few days later, Benjamin's secretary delivered the prenuptial property agreement. It was a thick stack of documents. He had signed over almost his entire fortune to me. After signing, I asked the secretary about Benjamin's recent situation. Benjamin hadn't been home since that night. The secretary said he had been holed up in his office, occasionally losing his temper in meetings, which had the entire company on edge. I told the secretary to remind Benjamin to get some rest. The secretary nodded repeatedly. With your concern, Mr. Lou will surely feel better. I tapped my fingers lightly and sent a message to Zoe. Miss Zhao, Mr. Lou had a fight with his fiancée. He must be missing you right now. As expected, Zoe went to find Benjamin. Her social media was filled with posts about them being together. She accompanied him to work. He waited for her after class. At night, they slept together. Seeing a sexy selfie Zoe took in bed, mirrored on the ceiling, I almost spat a mouthful of water onto my computer. Meanwhile, I went about my days alone, as if I were single again. But one day, while I was teaching a class, an unwelcome visitor appeared, surprised to see me. Sister, Zoe's docile and sweet demeanor was gone. Now, sitting across from me, she was the picture of arrogance. Sister, Benjamin did have some feelings for you, and I didn't want to cause trouble, so I played along with your little act. But things are different now. You've exhausted his patience. If you don't want to lose too badly, you should step aside now. This was the first time we had spoken face to face, and the first time I had such a direct view of her poverty. You're too impatient, I said slowly. You could have pretended not to know anything and simply waited for me to push Benjamin toward you, but you had to come here and cause a scene. Tell me, isn't this a case of biting the hand that feeds you? Zoe seemed enraged by my words. She clenched her jaw, her chest heaving. Benjamin would be mine even without you. Is that so? Then let's see if he goes to your place tonight. As I spoke, I sent a message to Benjamin. Zoe, unwilling to be outdone, also sent a message to Benjamin, coquettishly asking him to have dinner with her. A few minutes later, I received a reply that satisfied me completely. Zoe's face, however, turned ashen. Only I can help you get Benjamin, I said. Your best option now is to wait for me to leave. Then you can smoothly take my place. Zoe studied my expression, and after confirming that I wasn't lying, her tone softened. But will you really leave? I will. When? In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. It would be the wedding. Zoe left with a smile on her face. To her, 2 weeks was the countdown to her new life as a woman of status. After she left, I threw away the cup she had used. To have to suppress my anger and pretend to magnanimously plan her future. If I didn't want to ensure their public humiliation, I would never have given her the time of day. A person who knowingly becomes the other woman deserves nothing good. After Zoe left, I immediately contacted a friend who worked at her university. In a brief conversation, I learned that Zoe's grades had plummeted in the last 6 months. Currently, the only institution willing to grant her a scholarship was a private financial aid organization called Love Flame. I smiled. That organization was under my mother's company. What a coincidence. At that moment, I felt as if even fate was on my side. That evening, Benjamin did indeed come home, but this time, he seemed a bit reserved. I broke the ice, sharing details about the wedding preparations. The invitations have been sent out, the venue decorations are confirmed, and your suit and my dress are ready. My enthusiasm seemed to rub off on him, and his spirits lifted. He playfully insisted on seeing me in my wedding dress beforehand. No, if you see it now, there won't be a surprise on the day. I started to wonder what his expression would be when he saw Zoe on the stage instead. Benjamin was very concerned with his image. He might just go along with it to save face. That would be perfect. If he himself acknowledged Zoe as the bride, then the elders and friends present would have nothing to say. The thought brought an absurd smile to my face. Seeing this, Benjamin hugged me from behind. He whispered in my ear, "Honey, you've become so well-behaved. You used to make me be the one to apologize after every fight. Now you're the one reaching out to me." I thought about it, and it seemed to be true. When Benjamin and I first got together, we were already at a marriageable age, but I wasn't ready to settle down so early and was determined to pursue my doctorate abroad. Benjamin sulked about it for days, and my attempts to communicate with him were futile. On the day I was supposed to fly out, he suddenly appeared at the airport, his eyes red, accusing me of being cruel. During our 5 years together, I spent most of my time abroad. Benjamin would fly to see me whenever he had a spare moment. Just thinking about it now made me feel tired for him. I had suggested we break up, that he find a girl more suitable for him, but that only made him angry, and he accused me of pushing him away. A large part of my decision to return home and find a job was to spare him the exhausting travel. He had compromised so much for me over those 5 years. I thought I should also give something in return. I learned to love him as he loved me. Unfortunately, he did not remain faithful to me as I had been to him. With 3 days until the wedding, Benjamin finished his work early and stayed home to keep me company. I found his presence unbearable and contacted Zoe, telling her to find a way to get him out of the house. Zoe used every trick in the book and successfully kept him occupied for 2 days. During those 2 days, she was like a high school student before a major exam, filled with anxious excitement. She sent me their bed photos to show off while simultaneously, in a subservient tone, repeatedly asking for confirmation that I would really leave. I forwarded all those photos to the event planning manager, instructing her to be sure to display them on the wedding day. One day before the wedding, Zoe came to me in tears, saying Benjamin had given her a sum of money and told her to leave. Benjamin had given her 2 million. This would have been a fortune for Zoe, but because of the future I had promised her, she was no longer satisfied. She anxiously asked me what she should do. I gave her the hotel address and told her to be there on time on the wedding day. On the day of the wedding, I asked Zoe if she dared to marry Benjamin directly. Zoe didn't hesitate for a second and agreed. And so, within half an hour, the bride was changed from Ava to Zoe. When Zoe walked out of the dressing room in the full wedding gown and makeup, even I was momentarily stunned. She looked so much like me, without being told otherwise. The guests would probably think she was me. Zoe was completely immersed in the joy of marrying Benjamin. Buzzing with excitement, she completely ignored the fact that among the milling guests were many of her own university classmates. I had invited them under the guise of Love Flame's sponsorship. Students love a bit of drama, they are great at spreading news, have a strong sense of justice, and had received funding from my mother. With their help, Benjamin and Zoe's public humiliation would be all the more spectacular. Led by the wedding coordinator, Zoe waited outside the venue doors. Inside, soft music played, and the MC's voice rang out. And now, let us welcome the bride. Side story, Zoe's perspective. I had never seen such a magnificent wedding dress, but the first time I did, it was already mine. Waiting by the doors for those few minutes, I wasn't nervous at all. At his most passionate, Benjamin had sworn to love me for a lifetime. Now that he was finally free from that old woman's clutches, he would surely be pleasantly surprised to see me. The door slowly opened, and a warm spotlight fell upon me. The stage was flanked with expensive fresh flowers, and the air was filled with cheers and applause. She looked so much like the bride, I almost didn't recognize her. I didn't know what nonsense the people below were spouting. I am the bride, why would I need to look like anyone else? I composed my expression and stepped onto the aisle that was rightfully mine. Once I walked this path, my life would be one of luxury and ease. 1 step, 2 steps, I slowly approached my Benjamin, but before I could even reach his side, he suddenly spun around. He was indeed surprised. He was staring at me, dumbfounded. I reached out to take his arm, but suddenly an old couple appeared out of nowhere. The woman pushed me, and the man slapped Benjamin right across the face. I screamed, calling for Benjamin to save me, but he just stood there, ignoring me. Everything came into focus. The cheers weren't cheers, they were my classmates, hissing and booing me from the audience. They mercilessly exposed my identity, calling me a homewrecker. I looked at Benjamin and finally realized his expression wasn't one of surprise. His eyes were filled with pure terror. He took the slap, then started slapping himself several more times. He didn't stop until his lip was bleeding. Then, like a madman, he rushed towards me and demanded to know where his wife was. Ha 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 ha. He called her his wife. They weren't even married. What husband and wife? Besides, from the first time I met Ava, she never once lost her temper with me for being the other woman. The wife he spoke of didn't love him at all. I looked at the frantic Benjamin, a surge of hatred rising within me. I spat in his face. She doesn't want you anymore. To her, you're less than nothing. A few old women tore my wedding dress to shreds. Benjamin kicked the flowers everywhere. We fought in front of 1,000 people, but their eyes were all glued to the large screen. That bitch, Ava. She had actually put those private photos on public display. How could she be a teacher? How could she even be human? The people in the audience began to point and whisper about me openly. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I could feel their disgust. But I was the victim here. Why was everyone cheering for her? Why? I ran into Benjamin on the flight back from a visiting scholar program in Copenhagen. Half a year had passed, and the once dapper man was now gaunt and frail. He sat behind me, silent for the entire flight. It wasn't until we landed that he suddenly grabbed my luggage and said he wanted to take me somewhere. I never imagined that somewhere would be a prison. The once young and vibrant Zoe was now devoid of all her former luster. When she saw me, she fell to her knees on the other side of the glass partition, begging for my forgiveness. Sister, Benjamin never cheated. It was me. I seduced him. I photoshopped those pictures. I made up all those stories. Please, I'm begging you. Ask Benjamin to have mercy on me. Give me a chance to turn my life around. She lost control of her emotions and was quickly escorted away. I looked at Benjamin, whose eyes held a flicker of hope, and felt a surge of annoyance. You brought me here just to tell me this. Ava, I was a victim too. His voice was so pitiful, as if he had suffered a great injustice. In the time leading up to our wedding, she was constantly threatening suicide to make me see her. I didn't want any trouble, so I went along with it, but I never imagined she was pulling so many strings behind my back. Believe me, I never betrayed you, not physically, and certainly not emotionally. Ava, please come back. Don't leave me again. The sky outside suddenly darkened as the last ray of sunlight was swallowed by clouds. Just like the last shred of feeling I had for Benjamin was extinguished by his own hands. I took him somewhere too, to our would-be marital home, the home that Zoe had spoken of. Do you dare to go inside? Benjamin calmly walked up and keyed in the passcode, 061397. My birthday. Ava, I could never bring myself to come here. Every time I thought about it, I would remember the beautiful future we were supposed to have. But then, Benjamin froze when he saw me pull a miniature surveillance camera from the bedside table. I was here 6 months ago. Back then, the passcode was Zoe's birthday. There were 2 pairs of couple's slippers in the entryway. The mirrored ceiling reflected your entangled bodies. At the height of passion, Zoe would bite your collarbone and softly beg for mercy. Stop it. The day before the wedding, you and Zoe tried a particularly difficult position. Then you gave her a sum of money and told her to leave. Ava, stop it. Benjamin clutched his head and fell to his knees before me in agony. You can't even bear to hear this. But 2 weeks before the wedding, I was in the study right there, listening to you enjoy yourself. Benjamin, you were the one who gave her that 2 million, and now you're pinning all the blame on her. You did all of it, yet you stand there acting like a pitiful victim who did nothing wrong. Aren't you disgusting? As I walked out the door, I heard Benjamin's desperate sobs from inside. I thought that would be the end of it, but just a day later, his secretary contacted me. Miss Lynn, you have to get to the hospital. Something has happened to Mr. Lou. Is he dead? The sounds of various medical instruments beeped and whirred on the other end of the line. I couldn't help but be curious. When I arrived at the hospital, the hallway outside his room was crowded with people. My former parents-in-law were there. They had aged considerably, losing the regal air they had 6 months ago. Seeing them, I still had to respectfully call them uncle and auntie. They had always been kind to me and had not hesitated to discipline Benjamin and Zoe at the wedding. My dear child, you're finally here. I'm at my wit's end. Please, save my son. Auntie, you should be asking the doctors to save him. I only came today because I have some business to settle with Benjamin. Yes, of course, as long as you're willing to see him, anything is fine. Without another word, they pushed me into the hospital room. Benjamin lay flat on the bed, his eyes closed. His face was completely drained of color, making him look incredibly weak. I glanced at the medical chart at the head of the bed. Suicide attempt by sleeping pill overdose. So he really had almost died. I sat by the bed, quietly waiting for him to wake up. At one point, Benjamin's phone lit up. His lock screen came into view. It was a photo of me. Winters in Copenhagen are cold. I was wrapped in a bulky black down jacket, getting out of a car and taking small, quick steps toward a convenience store. The photo captured a daily ritual of mine during my visiting scholar program, and in Benjamin's phone, there were over 100 similar photos. I can't live without seeing you. Benjamin had woken up at some point. His voice was incredibly hoarse, likely a side effect of the sleeping pills. I knew you didn't want to be disturbed, so I stayed in the flat across from yours. I would wait by the window every day before you woke up, watching you step on the snow, get hit on by men, or chat with the shopkeeper. It all felt so unreal. So painful. The food in that godforsaken place was terrible. When I saw you couldn't eat, I couldn't eat either. When I saw you getting thinner, I forced myself to get thinner too. It was as if that was the only way I could legitimately be by your side. Ava, I was with you that whole 6 months. Zoe going to prison wasn't some dirty trick I pulled. She accidentally cut my mother with a knife at the wedding and later assaulted a police officer. She got what she deserved. I took you to see her because she seduced me in the first place. I wanted a chance to explain myself to you. Benjamin's pale, cold hand suddenly clasped my wrist. It felt like a cold, dead corpse had suddenly stood up in front of me. His story was indeed touching, but I would not allow our dead, rotten love to be resurrected. I yanked my hand away and shot up from the chair. I'm begging you, please don't die. And if you do, don't you dare say it was because of me. You have so many excuses and reasons, but you cannot deny that you were the one who slept with Zoe. Women lose their appeal when they get old. She's much more tender than Ava. You might be able to selectively forget those words, but I can't. Benjamin, stop acting like you're so in love with me. You were the one who betrayed our relationship first, and now you're playing the victim in front of everyone. What does that make me? If you actually died, would you want everyone to condemn me for being heartless? Would you want me to kill myself and join you in the afterlife? He wasn't the only one who invested 5 years in this relationship. So did I. During my years abroad pursuing my doctorate, I cried myself to sleep countless nights out of loneliness. The only time I could sleep soundly was when Benjamin was by my side. I had loved him to my very core. I couldn't even imagine what I would become without him. But it was him who grew tired of me as I aged. It was him who brought another woman into our home. And now he had the audacity to play the innocent, devoted lover, making a scene and threatening to die. It was insufferable. Benjamin, there is no future for us. Nothing you do will ever concern me again. As I walked out of the room, a group of worried faces looked at me. I walked up to Benjamin's mother and handed her the property documents Benjamin had gifted me 6 months ago. Auntie, Benjamin refuses to take these back. I'll have to trouble you to sign for them. As Benjamin's mother hesitantly took the documents, a loud thud came from inside the room. A thermos rolled out onto the floor. Benjamin was leaning against the doorframe, weakly calling out, "Don't take them. It's what I owe her." I closed my eyes, placed the stack of documents on the table, and walked away without looking back. Side story: Benjamin's perspective. A year after our breakup, Ava took up extreme sports. After one skydive, she told her instructor, "That was incredible. The adrenaline rush will be enough to get me through another 6 months of teaching." Was something bothering her? Should I help her? I thought about it, but decided against it. Ava had always been independent, strong, and brave. She had few troubles in her life. My existence was her biggest trouble. When she went bungee jumping, I secretly followed her again, standing on the opposite mountain, watching her climb onto the platform. My heart began to pound uncontrollably. Her hobbies were getting more and more dangerous, with no one to look out for her. What if there was an accident? I told my secretary to quickly arrange for a female instructor to accompany her. That way, she could have fun and feel safe. Before I could finish my sentence, I saw a man behind her through my binoculars. That man was holding her by the waist, and my Ava was smiling at him. In that moment, it felt as if someone was strangling me. It was unbearable, truly unbearable. Is this how Ava felt when she found out about me and Zoe? Panicked, anxious, in pain. The thought of dying crept back into my mind. I couldn't watch anymore. I threw the binoculars away. He was just holding her waist. He was probably just an instructor, but in the next second, a man's shout echoed across the valley, hitting my ears. I couldn't avoid hearing it. He said, "Ava, I love you. Will you marry me?" "Yes, I will marry you." That was Ava's reply. After a year, she had accepted someone else's proposal. Breathing became difficult, as if an invisible hand was squeezing my chest. I wanted to struggle, but I only grew more frantic. I stood up, but I didn't know where to go. After pacing in circles, I finally saw where Ava was. I have to get to Ava, wherever she is. That is my way forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. My foot suddenly found empty air, and I began to fall. I see now. There had always been a vast abyss between Ava and me. No matter how far I walked, I could never reach her side.